This conference will now be recorded.
In last session, we were discussing about what is blue-green deployment, what is canary deployment, and we were discussing about auto scaling, pod auto scaling, right? So, what is pod auto scaler? With respect to pod auto scaler, what is HPA? What is horizontal pod auto scaler? What is horizontal pod auto scaler and what is vertical pod auto scaler? We were discussing, but most of the cases we will be using what type of scaling? HPA, horizontal pod auto scaler. As I already told, this HPA works based on the metrics observed on your pod container, While creating a container in the pod, can I define resources for that pod like resource request and limits? How much CPU, how much memory minimum that pod container will get, and maximum how much it can utilize? Yes. So at the same time, using pod autoscaler, using HPA, is it possible for me to observe what is the current CPU utilization on that pod container and what is the memory utilization on that pod container? And based on the observed metrics, is it possible for me to increase and decrease the number of pod replicas using HPA automatically? Yes. But as I already told, HPA is going to depend HP is going to depend on some metrics. Does HPA requires metrics to take the decision? Does HPA requires metrics to take the decision? Yes. So metrics, someone should monitor your pods, containers, someone should gather the metrics. So does the HPA can communicate with that APIs to see the current utilization? Yes. As I already told, HPA will communicate with, or HPA will depend on whom for the data. Last class also I have pictorially explained. HPA will use metrics APIs, metrics server. So HPA will use the APIs exposed by another application, another concept called metrics server. So HPA will communicate with metrics APIs to see the metrics data. That metrics server is one application, one software. Do I need to install that add-on? I can say kind of a add-on in Kubernetes, kind of an application in Kubernetes. So do I need to install that metric server in my Kubernetes cluster so that metric server will expose the metrics about your pods, your nodes? Yes. That metric server will contact whom to gather the data, metrics about the nodes and the pods and containers which is running in that node. The metric server will communicate with whom? Metric server will communicate with kubelet. So as I already discussed, HPA, this horizontal pod autoscaler, automatically scales the number of pods in a replication controller deployment replica set based on the observed CPU utilization or memory utilization. This HPA, horizontal pod autoscaler, will scale the number of replicas, number of pods of a replication controller, deployment replica set, or stateful set also based on the observed CPU utilization or memory utilization. Daemon set will I able to horizontally scale the daemon set? No. So replication controller or deployment or replica set or stateful set. Horizontal pod autoscaler also implemented as a Kubernetes API, Kubernetes object. So this horizontal pod autoscaler determine the behavior of that pods. This horizontal pod autoscaler controller, that horizontal pod autoscaler periodically adjusts the number of replicas. It will periodically adjust the number of replicas to match the observed to match the observed average CPU and memory utilization to the target specified by the user. While creating a HPA, I will specify the threshold value or target value when it has to scale. So HPA will interact with whom? As I already told, HPA will interact with metric server to identify CPU and memory utilization of a pod container. So I need to have a metric server. As of now, do I have that metric server available, configured by default in the Kubernetes cluster? So let me connect to my Kubernetes cluster. Let me connect to my Kubernetes cluster where I have a kubectl. Now, if you see, as of now, this command, kubectl top command, I can use this top command also. Is this working as of now? No. It is saying metrics API not available. Because do I have anything related to metric server running in my Kubernetes cluster? Do I have anything related to metrics here? No. So by default, this metric server doesn't configured in your Kubernetes cluster. Do I need to configure? Do I need to deploy this metric server as an add-on based on your requirement? Yes. So earlier, sometimes in the interview also they will ask these questions. What is heapster? What is heapster in Kubernetes? Or sometimes they'll ask what is difference between heapster and the metric server, like this. These type of questions also sometimes they'll ask in the interview. So heapster, that is also kind of a gather, metrics gather. It is going to gather the metrics. So this heapster also kind of a cluster monitoring and performance analysis for Kubernetes, right? With version 1.0 and higher. So heapster collects the values like a CPU utilization, memory utilization of your pods, containers, all these things. But heapster is deprecated. Now heapster is deprecated. What do you mean by deprecated? Heapster is not now Kubernetes is not suggesting to use heapster because heapster is heavyweight. So it is heavyweight. What do you mean by heavyweight? Does heapster requires lot of CPU and memory? This is the official website of that heapster. Yes. So heapster is now retired. Which means they have deprecated. Now this heapster also does the same thing. It will, for basic CPU and memory HPA metrics, we can use that heapster, but heapster is deprecated. Why it is deprecated? Because it takes lot of CPU and memory. So they are saying this is deprecated. They have completely deprecated from where? In which version? From 1.13. They are saying no new bugs will be fixed. No new bugs will be fixed. They are completely deprecating after 1.3. You can still use, but they have deprecated. Why they have deprecated? Because heapster is deprecated because users are encouraged to use what? Users are encouraged to use metric server. Instead of heapster, they are encouraged to use metric server. Why heapster is deprecated? It requires lot of CPU memory to run that one, and metric server is lightweight. That metric server is lightweight. It will take very less CPU and memory to gather the metrics and all those things. So metric server is suggested. Now this is the official metric server. This is the official metric server website. So as I already told, what is metric server? Metric server collects resource metrics from kubelets. resource metrics from kubelets. What do you mean by resource metrics? CPU, memory. Can I call resource metrics are nothing but your CPU utilization and memory utilization of your nodes, your pods? Yes. So metric server collects resource metrics from the kubelets and exposes them in the Kubernetes API server through metrics API. So then does these types horizontal pod autoscaler and vertical pod autoscaler, can they use these metrics, whatever is gathered by metrics server and exposed to the APIs? Yes. So now you can use metric server for CPU or memory based horizontal scaling. You can use metric server to horizontally scale your pods using CPU and memory utilization. This metric server supports CPU and memory utilization metrics. Now, I need to install metric server. As of now, is that metric server installed in my Kubernetes cluster? No. Installation. Metric server can be installed directly using YML, that manifest file, or using Helm chart. I can install metric server directly using that manifest file or using Helm chart. What is Helm? What is this Helm chart? I will explain later. So what is this Helm? What is this Helm chart? What do you mean by Helm? I will explain that later. But just to give an high level overview, Helm is a package manager. Helm is a package manager for managing or deploying Kubernetes applications. Or simple, Helm is a package manager for deploying applications in Kubernetes. Helm is a package manager to deploy the applications in Kubernetes. It is similar to YAPT. Can I call YAM or APT or APK these things as a package managers? But these are system package managers. System package managers. System package managers. Similarly, there is a package manager for Helm for deploying, upgrading, removing the applications in Kubernetes. I can use Helm. So this I will explain later. What is Helm? What is the use of Helm? I will explain this later. So this metric server can be directly deployed using that YML file, Kubernetes manifest files, or via Helm chart also, using Helm chart also. Now, this is the YML. This is the YML location they are using, they are giving. Let me take that URL. Let me take that URL. Guys, as I already told, sir, people are asking, sir, in real time to install any software, can I follow your running notes? Can I follow your blog? Something like that. You can follow, but the requirement is same. The requirement is same, use case is same, you can follow. But if they are asking to install different versions of software, different versions of configurations, then you need to follow official websites, as I already told. Does each and every software will have some kind of official GitHub or official websites where they will give instructions, what is the tool, how to install, what is the prerequisite, everything in any any software. You can use that my instructions as a reference, but don't copy paste. Don't copy paste as is. So I am giving the instructions for metric server also. If you see in this document, did I give installation instructions how to install that metric server in your Kubernetes? Yes. For our students, for better understanding or usability, I am giving the instructions, but don't follow the same instructions. Follow the official website. If you follow the official website like this, will they give how that can be installed? What is that metric server? If your requirement is install using Helm chart, you can install using Helm chart, or you can use this YML. You can use this YML. But concepts are important. If you know what is metric server, what is the use of that metric server, what is Kubernetes, and how to deploy the applications in Kubernetes, then does this will be complex if you want to install from official instructions or my instructions, that doesn't matter. If you are already aware about that software, what is that, how it works, installation is nothing. As I already told multiple times, if you know only installing the software, do they hire you? If you know only installing the software, no one will hire you, right? You need to understand what is that, how it works, why we are using that, all these things. So don't focus too much on installations. Installation is also important, but don't by heart any installation. Now, let me open this file. Let me open this file and I will show you. I'll show you. So this file is provided by official community, Kubernetes community only. Now, if I open this file, do I have some kind of a Kubernetes manifest? Do I have some kind of a Kubernetes manifest? I'll come from the bottom. So do I have a deployment? Do I have a deployment? Do I have a deployment? The deployment is getting created in which namespace? Kube system namespace. Are they creating a deployment using this pod template? Using this pod template? Yes. Are they using this image? Are they using this image to create that one? What is that image? What is that image? Metric server. So is it our own image? Is it our own application software? Is it our own Docker image? Did we created this image? No. So this is in which registry? This is in which registry? Kubernetes GCR. Kubernetes GCR, not in the Docker Hub. It is in the Kubernetes GCR. This is registry, right? In that registry, they have this tag and this one. Now, it is going to use that image. Sir, yes, sir, what is this? You have a lot of options here. You have not at all explained what is this liveness probe, what is this readiness probe. You have not at all explained. I see a lot of things here. What do you mean by these volumes, volume mounts? I will come to that slowly. I will explain all these concepts. What is this liveness probe, readiness probe? What is this volumes, volume mounts? I will come to that slowly. For now, leave that aside. Now, what is this args? They have some args also like this. Now, is this passed as arguments to this container while starting the container? Is it going to use these options like arguments, runtime arguments, these options? So that metric server will be started with these options. Like in the Docker, when you are passing at runtime, is it equivalent to like this? Something like this. That image name, is it equivalent to like this? I am executing, passing some commands like this at runtime. This one, is this will be used as an argument to start the container process inside this? Yes. So it is going to take all these arguments. So that is how the requirement is. Now there is a deployment, there is a service created, there is a service of type what they are creating here. They have not mentioned any type. So what is the default type of service for that metric server which gets created? What is the default type? Cluster. Now, sir, what is this? I see something new Kubernetes resources. I see some new Kubernetes resource called service account. I see some new Kubernetes resource called cluster role bindings. What is this? This I will explain in detail later, but the concept here is RBAC. What do you mean by RBAC? Role based access control, role based access control. Basically permissions, authorization. Now this metric server is one application. Does that metric server needs to communicate with kubelet API server? Does this metric server needs to communicate with your API server, your Kubernetes APIs, to gather all the data, the nodes data, pods data? Does this metric server application, does this needs to communicate with your Kubernetes APIs to gather the data? Yes. But does this metric server requires permissions to communicate with your Kubernetes APIs, like access permissions? So how we are granting the permissions for this metric servers to communicate with Kubernetes APIs? It is similar to AWS IAM, guys. Suppose in AWS we have IAM. If one of the EC2 instance needs to manage AWS resources, it requires permissions to read, write, update, delete AWS related services. Are we using some concept called IAM in AWS, where we have a policies, that policies will be attached to the role, that role is attached to the server? So does that server will be able to manage AWS services based on the policies attached to that role? Similarly here we have some concepts in detail. I will explain later. We are creating one service account. This is like a role. This is like a role in AWS, Kubernetes. We are creating one service account here with this name. This role is like a policies in AWS. Just I am comparing, since you are already familiar with AWS, I am just comparing the terminologies. Is this role is similar to the policies, where I am giving some permissions like get, list, watch permissions to these Kubernetes resources? For pods and nodes, we are granting these permissions. This is like a policy. Now this is a role. Service account. Service is like account is like a IAM role. Now this is like a policy. Now this policy, I mean to say this role, whatever role I am creating, this role I am going to bind, I am going to link that role, whatever role I am creating, with that service account. I am linking here using this role binding. I am linking that service account with that role, whatever I am creating. In the role I have granted permissions. That permissions I am linking with that service account, and with this pod, if you see, am I using that service account here? One field is there called service account name. Am I using that service account here in this pod deployment? Am I attaching that service account to this pod? So this metric server is running in this pod, so that metric server container will be able to manage Kubernetes APIs, Kubernetes resources based on the roles attached to this service account. Will it able to get the node details, pods details? Yes. So that is how it is working. Now I will explain this RBAC later, but just to give an idea, I am explaining here. This is also simple. This RBAC is nothing but authorization. Who can do what within Kubernetes? Who can do what with in Kubernetes? Permissions. So that is why I am creating all these things. But you may have a question, sir, why you are not creating these service accounts, roles, role bindings for whatever applications we deployed? You may have a question, sir, why you are not creating the service accounts, roles, role bindings for whatever applications you already deployed? You deployed a lot of applications. Does my applications will talk to the Kubernetes APIs? Does my application will communicate with Kubernetes APIs? Does my application is going to access the pod details, node details, or service details like that? No. That is our own applications. That applications will run in Kubernetes, but does that application requires access to your Kubernetes APIs? Our own applications, our own microservices, will just run in Kubernetes, but does those microservices will make a API calls to the Kubernetes APIs? Does that own microservice needs to know about the Kubernetes APIs? No. So that's why we are not giving that. But this is kind of some internal application. Do I need the required permissions for this one to communicate with kubelet APIs to get the node details, pod details? So that's why we are using this service account. Now, if I apply all these things, does that metric server will get deployed now? If I apply all these things, does that metric server will get deployed now? Yes. But for our students' understanding, what I have done within our GitHub, also I am maintaining similar stuff. Within our GitHub also I am maintaining similar stuff here. Metrics server. So here I am explaining what is what. Again, same thing. Metrics server, how to deploy. For our students understanding and make the things simple, what I have done, I created one repository here. I am maintaining those YMLs. I am maintaining those YMLs in a separate files. If you see this role bindings, service accounts in one file, that service account in one file, that role binding in another file, that deployment in one file, that deployment is in one file. I'm using all this in one file. Now, if I install this official also, this is official metric server GitHub. This is official metric server GitHub. They are saying follow this one. It may not work because I need to tweak some configurations. Otherwise, it may not work. It will fail. So let me apply this official only. I'm executing something like this. kubectl apply. They have given installation instruction like this. Now it is going to create a metric server, all the required roles, role binding, service accounts, all these things. Now in the kube system namespace, do I have some metric server running? Do I have some metric server getting scheduled? Because it has created a deployment. The deployment is creating a replica set. Now the metric server is getting created. It is running, but you need to tweak some configurations. It may not work. Let me show you. It is not coming up. Still it is showing 0 only. Let's wait for some time. As a prerequisite, if I want to create a HPA, horizontal pod autoscaler, I want to use, do I need to have this metric server configured in that cluster? Without having this metric server, even though you create a HPA, will it work? No, because it requires data. It will not work. Now this metric server is not coming up, even though it is showing in running state. Why it is showing 0 by 1, I'll explain later. There is a concept called readiness probe. There is a concept called liveness probe that I will explain later. Even though it is showing in running state, it is not showing here ready. Slowly we will understand all the concepts. For now, let me describe this pod. So there is a issue here. So this readiness probe is failed. This readiness probe is failed. So that's why it is not showing ready. What is that readiness probe, liveness probe? I will explain later. I need to tweak some configurations here to make this work. Now there are some issues starting that. I need to tweak some configurations here. It is saying fail to get the details from this one because it does not contain any IP. Some errors are there because I need to tweak some configurations here. If you see this YML, we are passing some arguments here. We are passing some arguments here. I need to tweak some arguments here. Now I have done the required changes. I have done the required changes in our own YML. So let's see, is there any difference here between the official and here? One, two, three, four, five, six. This option is not there. This option is not there in the official website. So because of that, it is not working. And also you can see the troubleshooting steps also in the official website itself. They will give like known issues, frequently asked questions. Like sometimes your metric server may not work. In that case, you have to follow some instructions here. So depending on your cluster setup, you may need to change the flags passed to the metric server. So here they're asking me to pass some additional details like this. So they're asking use this option like this. So I need to tweak that one. If you are following, you need to follow all these instructions also. Now, instead of directly applying this file like this, instead of directly applying the file like this, kubectl apply, can I take that file? Can I modify the file as per the required configurations and apply? Can I take this file, download this file instead of directly applying like this? Can I take this file? Can I do something like this? Curl or wget, get that file, then modify the required parameters and apply? Yes. Otherwise, can I directly edit also? I can do something like this, curl -o -o, something like this. I can save this file. Now I can modify this file as per the sorry, I need to use a different option, curl -f or -o. Let me see, I need to get the content. I need to explore that options, curl options. Okay, let's leave that. Now, otherwise, I can directly edit. Can I edit something like this? kubectl edit also. kubectl edit that deployment. So I already deployed directly. Can I do something like this? kubectl edit deployment imperatively. Can I edit this deployment imperatively? This metric server deployment. This metric server deployment, edit deployment, deployment name -n in kube system namespace -o YAML. Imperatively, I already deployed. Now it is opening like this. Can I modify those configurations? Can I modify those configurations like this as per the given configurations, whatever they are giving, like this, which I have already done in my own GitHub. So for our students, to make things simple, I have already done like this, the required configurations like this. Now, if you directly deploy from this instructions, if you are deploying from this instructions, will it work? Whatever instructions I have given, because I already modified all those YAMLs and kept like this. If you clone this repo, this is our own repo. You clone that repo, go inside that metric server folder. If you execute like this, it will work. If you are following the official instructions, it may work or it may not work. But you need to understand and troubleshoot. So I am doing like this. Let me escape and save this. Now let's see. Now if this works. Your pods are getting recreated because I modified the deployment. Is it following that rolling deployment strategy? Because I modified my deployment, is it creating a new pod with that changes? Whatever changes I have done. Once this is ready, the old pod will get terminated. Sorry. The old pod gets terminated once that is ready. Now, if you see, after making that fix, is this metric server started working? Can I see that now one by one? Now it is terminating old pod. So you can follow official website, but you should have understanding about understanding the issues and tweaking that configurations based on the issues. But here I am giving official website. Here I am fixing and I am giving the details. But if you see, if you always follow these instructions, whatever I am giving, is it installing the latest version of metric server image? Is it always latest version of the metric server image? If you see, no. So while learning, I am making the things simple for you. While learning, I am making the things simple for you. But once you are already know about what is metric server, what is Kubernetes, how to deploy, how to troubleshoot, how to fix the problems, is it again recommended to follow whatever you have learned like 3-4 years back? Are you going to follow same instructions to deploy after 5 years also, 6 years also like that? No. In that case, do you need to be familiar with official documentations, how to use, what is the prerequisite, how to troubleshoot all these things? Because people are asking me, sir, can I follow your instructions? Yes, you can follow as a reference, but not always. But does that matters here? Metric server is important, but that matters here how you are installing? No. So you need to understand what is metric server, what is Kubernetes, how to install. Then you can install whatever version as per your requirement. That's why for this batch, I was not showing this one. Earlier, what I used to show, I was never showing this one, like official website. I was saying, go to this website, clone that website like this, git clone, go inside that folder, this metric server folder, execute this command, it will apply everything. But now I have explained this way. So what I have done, I have followed this official website. I applied this one first. Later, I have edited my deployment to add this flag. I have modified my deployment to add this flag. But how I have added? Something like this. Hyphen and that additional flag. Sorry, this additional flag. Something like this. Imperatively. Otherwise, you can download this file, modify this file, and apply this file. Or if you don't want to take all that risk, sir, it is very complex for me, I am not able to understand, then can you follow like this? Whatever instructions I have given in my document, you clone that repo, which is our own repository, into the server where you have a kubectl, go inside that metric server folder. Because I have already modified all these things, if you execute this command, is it going to apply all those deployment services, config maps, or whatever it is? Yes. Now I have done official way. Now, is my metric server running in kube system namespace without any issues? Now, It will take some time. Already it is 4-5 minutes. Now am I able to see the utilization of my nodes, the CPU utilization, memory utilization of my nodes, and also can I see the utilization of my containers which is running in that pod metrics? Am I able to see pod metrics also? How much CPU, how much memory? Now there is a one more option, hyphen container equals to true. If I have a multiple containers, if I have a multiple containers in that pods, may multi-container pods. One second. Containers. It is containers. So if I have a multiple containers in each pod, now is it going to show like this pod name and container name? Suppose this pod has a multi containers. Am I able to see at a container level also? Suppose this pod has a multiple containers, multi container pods. If I use this option, is it going to show container name in that pod? As of now, I don't have any multi-container pods. I don't have any multi-container pods. That's why I don't see multiple. But if I have a multi-container pods, will I able to see at a container level instead of pod level what is the resources? If I use this option, yes. So now metric server is gathering all this data. But is this metric server is directly communicating with that pod or container to gather this data? Is metric server is directly gathering the data from that pod or that container? No. It is gathering all this data using kubelet APIs. So is kubelet is going to observe your node, your pod, your containers? Yes. So this metric server is going to gather the data from that kubelet. Now based on these metrics now, will I able to create a HPA, horizontal pod autoscaler? Guys, if you feel it is difficult to deploy like this, you are installing this YML, then you are editing this YML or that object directly. If you feel this is difficult to add this flag, then I suggest you to follow our website. I'll suggest you to follow our website. So this is, I have already given in the installation. So execute this in your server where you have a kubectl, cd to the directory, and from the top directory, from metric server directory, execute this command. With this, metric server will be installed. But today class, I was explaining officially because that is not working. I have tweaked my configurations. Okay. Now, my metric server is there. Now, can I use HPA for any application, whatever application I want to scale automatically now? Can I create a HPA based on the load? I want to scale up, scale down my pods? Yes. Now, as of now, do I have any HPAs in any namespace? Did I created any horizontal pod autoscalers in any namespace for any application? Now, if you see, I have a deployment. I deployed this Maven web application, or I have deployed some other application as a deployment or replication controller. As of now, what type of scaling we have done? Increasing and decreasing the number of replicas as of now? Manual. Now, if I create a HPA, does HPA will adjust the number of pod replicas based on the load, based on the CPU and memory utilization on that pod container? Yes. As a prerequisite, do I need to have a metric server installed or configured in that cluster if I want to use HPA? Yes, that is also done. Now, let me create a HPA. So we completed the first part. Now let's create a simple deployment and start understanding the HPA. But here I am taking some sample application. Here I am taking some sample application. I'm taking some sample application. That can be your application also. That can be your application, your actual deployment, your actual application also. First, let me explain with sample application so that it will be easy for you. This you already know. What I am doing? Am I doing something different here? Nothing. I am deploying one application. I am taking this sample application. Instead of this application, it will be your own application, your own microservice image. Are you guys familiar with this already? Manifest, whatever I am showing here. You know what is deployment, what is deployment, what is this replicas, what is this template. But here I'm using one example that is provided by whom to understand HPA, that is provided by Kubernetes itself. That is provided by Kubernetes itself. Very simple application. Don't get confused with these names. People are considering these names. Does this names matter here? I'm saying HPA deployment label also like this. Does this matter here? No. This can be anything. This can be ABC also. This can be ABC also. But these labels are not required. As I already told, we can add a labels to the deployment. These labels are not mandatory because nowhere we are using. These are your selectors. Here, can I say different something like this? Sample app instead of HPA. Can I have something like this? Yes. That doesn't matter here, guys. That doesn't matter here. So people are confused with these names. That doesn't matter. I have just given a name as HPA deployment, labels as HPA pod. That can be anything using this sample image. Now, what is this? I already explained from last 3-4 days. You are already familiar with this. While creating a pods, while creating a containers, can I define the resource request and limits? Yes. So resource request, resource request. What do you mean by resource request in Kubernetes? Minimum resources to be available. Minimum resources to be available for that pod container. So if your Kubernetes nodes in your Kubernetes cluster, no system have this much resources available, does kubelet, I mean to say, does scheduler will schedule this pod if none of the node has this much available? It is kind of a marking, guys. Don't consider it is going to use this much. Even it can use 1M or just 12 megabytes also, but still that is marked as reserved for that system, reserved for that system, that pod, that container. This is minimum resources available for your pod container. And what is this limits? Maximum it can utilize. Now, this is again based on your requirement, guys. Let's say if I say just a 12 MI or 10 MI, do you think always it is 10 MI like this? Based on your requirement. Now let's say I am giving something like this, 64 MI, something like this. Now, if this process, if this container requires more than this much memory, does your container will start within this memory? Does the pod container will be able to start within this memory if it is requires more to start itself? No. So you will have a OOM killed, OOM killed, out of memory killed. So is this resource request and limits is based on what type of software you are running in that image, how much minimum you need for that software to run, how much maximum it can take when there is a load. Is this resource request and limits is based on what type of application or software you are having in that image? Or is it always same like this? Or is it always same like this? No, it is not always same. Based on the software which you are running, based on the software which you have in that image, based on the application which you have in that image. Now let's say I'm going to use this resource request for my Tomcat application. Let's say if I say limit as 64 MI, do you think your Tomcat can start within this 64 MI? 64 megabytes, do you think your Tomcat will come up? No. It will try to start, but it requires more memory. If it is running out of memory, as I already told, what will happen? Is it going to be like OOM killed, out of memory killed? Yes. So for this sample application, they have given like this. For the sample application, they have given like this. So I'm just using that one. Now, one more important concept here. Is this correct, guys? Is this correct? I am requesting 100 millicore CPUs. I am limiting 50 millicore. Do you think is this correct? No. Is this fine at least? Is this fine at least? I am requesting 100 millicore and limit also 100 millicore. Is this fine? Yes. But do I have a problem with this? If I say 200 millicore, 400 millicore, is this also fine? Yes. No issues. Now, again, when it comes to memory, is this fine? Let's say here I am requesting 1 GB, but I am limiting 256 MB. Is this correct? No. I think I have already explained. Resource requests should be always, or let's say other way. Resource limits. Let's say other way. Resource limits should be always what? Greater than or equal to what? Resource requests. Sometimes in the interview they are going to ask these type of questions. You will, sir, they're asking some real-time questions or scenario-based questions. These are not like real-time or real-time questions. These are like a understanding, how good you have understanding of that Kubernetes concepts. So they want to check whether you have by-hearted whatever Balaji has explained in Mithun Technologies, or you know something about that. Are you blindly copy-pasted and learned? Or you know something about that? They want to test in simple. If you follow stepwise, blindly copy-pasted, if they ask these type of questions, will you able to understand first what is what here? If you copy-paste and practicing, no. So that's why I'm saying understand the concept, then you can manage anything. Is everyone clear? What is this resource request and limits? Yes. Now let me deploy the sample application in whatever namespace, that doesn't matter. In whatever namespace, that doesn't matter. So I'm just deploying that sample application. But don't always think HPA will work only for this application. Does HPA will work for any type of deployment, replica set, replication controller, or stateful set, whatever you are deploying? Yes. Now, let me deploy this deployment. kubectl apply -f that HPA application I deployed. So there is it is already saying, because I have kept this one, so it is giving that warning. So it was like how much? 64. It is no need to be always 64. You can give more also. You can reserve more also. So let's say I am saying 64, not GI, MI. I think I have already explained this M stands for millicore. When you are using CPU, can I give something like this? 100 M, capital M, or capital MI like this? No. CPUs in millicores. Memory like this, MIGA. Now let me do this deployment. HPA. Now I created a deployment. Pods are getting created. This you already know. Now I want to access this application. This is also one sample application, one application. I want to access this application internally or externally. What Kubernetes resource needs to be created? The way we created a deployment, what is another resource which I want to create to access that application internally or externally? Service. So I'll create a service, something like this. I'll create a service. You already know what is service, what types of services you have. So I'm creating a service also like this. I'm creating a service like this. What type of service? Cluster IP service. For now, if you want to access from outside, can I change this to node port? I want to access this application from outside also. I can change this node port and apply. Since I have not mentioned any namespace, in which namespace these are getting created? In my manifest also I have not mentioned any namespace. In manifest also I have not mentioned any namespace. In the default namespace, it is created. Now I have a service. I have a service also to access that application. Now just to use, since I am already part of the cluster, this current node is also part of the cluster. Is that current node, this current server, is it part of my cluster? I mean to say, is it kind of a master node? There itself I have a kubectl. Now if I want to see, can I do something like this? The service port is 80. Am I getting a response from that sample application? Very simple application. I'm getting okay. I'm getting 200 response with the message saying okay. This is very simple application. You don't need complex application to understand the concepts. Application can be complex or sample, but concepts will not change. Concepts will not change based on the application. Now I am getting 200 and very simple response, okay. Now if I want to access from outside, I can use this port 30798 because I have created a node port service. So let me go to this. So let me access that using node IP and node port. Now let's see. So that node port is this one from outside, and from whatever server where I have opened that port, I think I have opened from this server. Let me use that port here. Now am I getting a response from outside also? Am I able to access that sample application? Yes. Now we don't have any HPA as of now. We don't have any HPA. Did I created a HPA for the deployment? As of now, did I created HPA for the deployment? This is a normal deployment. This is a normal deployment. How many replicas I have mentioned in the manifest? How many replicas I have mentioned in the manifest? 2. Now, even though there is a lot of load, even though there is a lot of load, do you think will you get a third pod, fourth pod like that automatically now? No, because we don't have any HPA created. Now let me show you. Let me show you. I have to put the lot of load. Now how I can increase lot of load? I mean to say basically, if lot of people access this application, does that load will be increased automatically? Does the CPU utilization, memory utilization of that application, that pod container, will it go high? Does that process will take lot of CPU and memory? Yes. Now I don't have any end users. I don't have lakhs of users to access this application. Can I use some kind of a tools? Maybe if you are already in IT, if you are from testing background, there is a one type of testing called, there are different testing, functional testing, functional testing. So functional testing, what they will do as part of the functional testing, they are going to test the functionalities, whether that application is working fine as per the given functionality, as per the given requirement, is that application is working fine. That is functional testing. Similarly, there is another type of testing called performance or load or stress. Performance testing or load testing, or we call it as a stress testing. As part of this testing, what the testers will try to test, already functionalities are working fine, but are they going to measure the performance of that application when there is a lot of load, whether that application is going to support with that much users, that much load? They are going to keep a stress, they are going to keep a stress on that application. Is capable of handling that much stress, or will it burst? If it is not able to handle that much stress, which means your application will not work. So in the actual applications, there will be a different types of testing: functional testing, performance testing, unit testing, integration testing, like that. Now, as part of the performance testing, does applications has to go through this performance testing also? And also there will be a security testing also, SecOps, security. So they are going to do some kind of a two things here: static testing and dynamic testing. This static testing is basically kind of a code quality checks, whether developers are following, whether they're as per the code quality or not, right? Code quality, kind of a sonar cube. Can I do that static code testing? While before building the application package, before deploying that application package itself, I can do the static code analysis. That is static testing. Dynamic testing, in the sense, once the application is deployed, they are going to play around with your application. They are going to inject some hackings. There are different techniques, guys. SQL injection, cross-site request forgery. There will be a testing team. There are a lot of tools also available for this dynamic testing. There are a lot of tools available. Security vulnerabilities, we call it as a security vulnerabilities to test. So as part of this application testing, what they'll try to do, right, the testers, they will try to use some kind of you have a input fields, you have input boxes, like give your username, give your password. So they will try to give, instead of using some usernames like Balaji or username like Mithun, the testing what they will do, they'll try to give some kind of a SQL queries itself. In that input box, they'll try to give some kind of a SQL queries itself. But if your code is not able to detect, and if your code is not able to handle these type of injections, does this query will be executed inside your database and your database gets corrupted? You are using SQL query as input, kind of a hacking. If your code is not able to do these type of handlings, then do you have a SQL injection in your project, in your application? So you should need to prevent all these things. The development team will take care. The development team will take care all these SQL injections, cross-site request forgery, but the testing also will happen. There are a lot of testings: security testing, performance testing, functional testing, all these things. Now, as part of the performance testing, what they do as a testers, what they do basically, do they need to, I mean to say, do they have, put the load, lot of load, how much, your application, your infrastructure is, whether it's a capable of handling hundreds of requests, millions of requests per second, per hour. If hundreds of users are accessing your application per second, is your application is able to sustain that or not? That is kind of a load testing. Now I don't have lot of users. Now I will use some kind of a tools. There are different tools. Testing team will use different tools like JMeter, QRunner, or load runner. Anyone from testing background here? I hope you are already familiar with these things if you are from a testing background. So we have some type of tools, but for now I am not going to use any tool also. Now can I do something like this? Curl on that URL infinitely because I don't have a users. I don't have a lot of users to access that application. Can I do some kind of a curl in the infinite loop on that URL? In an infinite loop, can I invoke that URL or API? Infinite loop, which means you are accessing that like a lot of users. Now, to do that, what I will do, I'll create one temporary pod. I'll create one temporary pod. I want to do that using some temporary pod. So can I create a temporary pod? What do you mean by temporary pod? I'm creating one pod interactively, kubectl run. This is my pod name. I can use anything. This is my pod name. I can use anything. Load generator, something like this. -i, -tty, interactively, -rm, image. I am using one image called busybox. This is one image, guys. This is just one Linux library with the wget and curl software. This is one Linux library. There is no software like Tomcat, JBoss, nothing is there. Only some Linux library with the wget binary. Now I am creating interactively. What is this -rm does basically? This -rm is going to remove the pod. Once I come out of that pod, once I exit from that pod, is that pod will be automatically removed because of this -rm option? Yes. And what is this -i tty -i something like this? Interactively, I am creating something like this. kubectl run -i this remove option. My image is this -image. I need to use that option. -image, that image option. Last, my command bin/bash. So I am creating my container interactively. Now will I land inside that container? And again, I am creating this container in a which namespace? I mean to say this pod in which namespace, because I have not mentioned any namespace name. In which namespace? Default. Now interactively I am creating. Now can I access the other application, that demo application, sample application from this pod, from this container, using service name? Using service name itself, will I able to access that from this pod, this container? Now in the background, it is pulling the required image to create a container interactively, and I am going to go inside that pod container. Just to demonstrate, I am creating this temporary pod. From this pod, can I put the load on the other application using that URL? Infinitely, can I invoke that URL so that lot of requests goes to that application, that pods? Now let's see what is happening. What is happening? It is taking huge time. There is a problem. Might be something wrong with my command. kubectl run load generator -i -tty -rm -image kubectl bin/bash. If that bash doesn't have, okay, the problem is with the bash, because bash is not part of that image. So instead of bash, what I supposed to use? sh. Okay, so bash by library is not part of that one. That's why It is not able to go inside. So let me use sh. Let me use sh. Let me use sh instead of bash. Now, am I inside that pod, inside that shell, inside that container shell? Now, curl is not there. I have a wget. I have a wget as part of that container. Now I am doing something like this. That service name. Can I use that service name? Whatever service I have created for that one this application, can I use this service name to see whether I can access that or not? Now, am I getting a response from that application? This is the service name. But if I have a created with a different name, people are blindly typing, they're not understanding. Instead of this one, if I have something like this, can I use this name instead of that this name? Yes. Now, one more problem. Let's say this is in a different namespace. This is in a different namespace, your application. You are creating this load generator in a default namespace. Again, will it work if you use just service name like this? No. In that case, what concept you have to use? Do you need to use FQDN of this service? Something like this, data namespace. Currently, this is in which namespace? Currently, this service is created in which namespace? Default .svc .cluster .local. Now, am I getting a response like this? So concepts are important, guys. If you by hearting the commands and copy pasting, it may not work. Lot of students come to me, sir, this is not working. Because you might have created this service in some other namespace. Your load generator pod is in different namespace. Even though service name is correct, will it work? No. Suppose this service is in a different namespace. Do I need to use here like FQDN instead of default? Do I need to use that service name? Sorry, namespace name? Yes. Now I will put the load like this. I'll put the load like this. I created the temporary pod. What is this, guys? Now what is this here? I'm going to execute something like this. I am accessing that URL, but what is this? While true, do, done. Is it like an infinite loop? Is it like an infinite loop? Infinitely, is this wget command gets executed? Now, does the load will be built upon that pod, that sample application? If I execute this one, yes. Let me open multiple shells so that you can understand what is happening. Let me open multiple shells. Let me open multiple shells here so that you can understand what is happening in the background. Now I am connecting to same machine where I have a kubectl installed. I am connecting to same machine where I have a kubectl installed. Guys, this is very simple topic, but I want to explain in detail what is HPA, how it works. So I am making things complex. Basically, this HPA is very simple. HPA is basically it is going to increase and decrease the number of pods based on the load. Just 5 minutes. But why I am taking 1 hour to explain or 2 hours to explain this? You need to be familiar with concept. What is what? How it is working in the background. So I am taking much time so that it will be easy for you to understand what is what. Now let me connect to this server. Let me connect to this server. So if you need me to finish Docker in 2 months, I can finish. How? I can explain HPA. I'll just explain HPA. I will demonstrate also HPA, but if you don't know what is happening in the background, you know HPA, but what is happening in the background, you don't know. So if you want to finish DevOps in 2 months, we can do that. We can cover all the topics. Even I can cover HPA also, but I'll just explain HPA. HPA horizontal pod autoscaler will increase and decrease the pod replicas based on the observed CPU and memory utilization. 5 minutes. Another 10 minutes to install HPA. Another 5 minutes to demonstrate that application. But If you want to know more, you need to understand in and out. That is where time is taking. Now, let me do this. kubectl top pods. kubectl top pods. Sorry, kubectl, there is a typo. As of now, this is my load generator. That is fine, you can ignore. As of now, how much CPU, how much memory currently on this application? Because there is no load, only 1 millicore is used. Now, as of now, how many pods are there? How many pods are there for that application? Because I have given replicas as 2. Do I have 2 replicas as of now? Now let me put the load now. Let me put the load using this command. From my temporary pod, I am putting the load. Let me press enter. Now it is slowly, it is in an infinite loop. It is like multiple users are accessing that application. Now, if you slowly observe here, is my CPU utilization is going high here? It is CPU centric application. So a lot of CPU utilization is happening here. 34 millicore, 39 millicore. One more concept you can easily understand now. I'm using a service name. Is that service is acting as a load balancer? If you see, is the load is getting distributed between those two pods? Is it always requests are going to same pod? No. Load is getting distributed. Now, if you see, lot of memory utilization or CPU utilization is going high. Now, is that automatically it is increasing the pods based on the load? As of now, do you see pods are getting increased automatically? No. Now, let's say you don't take any action. You have limited your CPUs as 100 millicore. If that is already utilizing 100 millicores, do you have a better performance? Is your application will respond very quickly the way it used to respond earlier? No. If it is running out of memory, let's say, if it is running out of memory, what will happen? OOM killed. So even though container is killed, again it will start. But again, will it be killed after some time? Again, there is a load after some time, again it will be killed. If it is a memory issue, is that the solution? Because your containers, your pods are managed by deployments, pods will be recreated, but that is not the solution. Do I need to scale now? Yes. But I don't want to manually scale. Now, can I create a one more Kubernetes resource for this deployment to horizontally scale my pods based on this observed CPU and memory utilization? Yes. Do I have that created as of now, HPA? Do I have created that HPA as of now? No. So that's why it is not scaling. Now let me stop the load. Let me press Control C. Let me press Control C. Let me type exit. Since I have used this option, that -" remove option, is that pod gets deleted, the temporary pod, the moment I type exit? Yes. Now I'll create a one more Kubernetes resource now. What is that? We call that as a HPA, horizontal pod autoscaler. Horizontal pod autoscaler. Something like this. Something like this. Horizontal pod autoscaler. This is one more Kubernetes resource. The way we have a deployment, the way we have a service, the way we have a pod, the way we have other Kubernetes resource, they have one type of object called horizontal pod autoscaler. Yes. Kind is horizontal pod autoscaler. What is the API version for that? Autoscaling / v2. If you don't know kubectl API resources, will it give the kind and API version of that? Yes. If you don't know anything also, can I go to the official Kubernetes website? kubernetes.io. If I go here, if I search here in the documentation, HPA, or you can search with full form, horizontal pod autoscaler. So horizontal pod autoscaler, whatever I have explained, it will automatically update the workload resources such as deployment stateful set, automatically scaling the workloads to match the demand. So it is going to increase and decrease the number of pods based on the observed CPU and memory utilization. Before you begin, you need to have a Kubernetes cluster. You should be familiar with kubectl, and also you need to have that metric server, all these things. So same application, whatever they have given in this official website, I deployed the same application. Now I need to create a horizontal pod autoscaler. So they are creating how? In this, they are creating how? Are they using declarative approach or imperative approach in the documentation? If you see, imperative. Now I am going to do it in a declarative like this. Horizontal pod autoscaler. Here, what is this specification? Is it your deployment specification or service specification, or is it your horizontal pod autoscaler specification? Whatever you see here, your horizontal pod autoscaler specification. Here, what is this min replicas, max replicas? As I already told, minimum replicas I am giving it as 2, which means always, irrespective whether you have a load, you don't have a load on that application, minimum how many pods it will always maintain 2. Whenever there is a load, whenever there is a load on that pod, that application, up to how many pods it will scale? 5. But how it will scale, when it will scale, how to scale, when to scale, that depends on what? Is it depends on the metrics, I mean to say the threshold values I have defined here. Is it going to scale based on the threshold values which I have defined here? Yes. It supports 2 types of threshold values. One is what? One is CPU, another one is memory. Is it mandatory to define both? Is it mandatory to have CPU based scaling as well as memory based scaling? Is it mandatory to define both? No. If your application is CPU centric, if your application is CPU centric, which means your software, whatever you are running, your application is CPU centric, which means whenever there is a load, it will take lot of CPU. Then can I scale based on the CPUs, number of CPUs, number of percentage of CPUs your application is using? Yes. Suppose your application is memory centric. Suppose your application is memory centric, which means whenever there is a lot of load, your application is going to take more memory. Then can I define memory based scaling? Or if required both like this, if required both like this, yes. Now utilization in the percentages. So here I have given 40. What do you mean by 40 here? 40 percentage. 40 percentage. Guys, again, sometimes in the interview they are going to ask, is this scaling will happen based on the limit values, or is it scaling will happen based on the requested values? So this scaling, this HPA, this pod autoscaler, basically pod autoscaler scale against resource requests, not limits, which means now I have defined 40% of CPU utilization. Whenever there is a 40% utilization, it has to scale. But 40%, is it 40% of limit, or is it going to consider 40% of request? That is what I mean here. This 40% is on limit or request. That is based on the request only, not based on the limit. So 40% of 100 millicores is what? Suppose if I given CPU utilization 40%, 40% of 100 millicores is what? The moment it reaches 40 millicores, can I consider that as a 40%? 100 millicores, 40%. Now let's say memory 64 MI, let's say 40% of 64 MI is how much in the memory perspective? So 64 into 40 divided by 100, some logic unit apply, approximately 27, 28 megabytes, approximately 27, 28 megabytes. The moment it reaches approximately 27, 28 megabytes, is it going to scale based on the threshold value memory? Yes. But here I have given very less numbers. But in real time, are you going to scale like this? You will scale whenever it reaches almost like 80 or 85. But why I have taken 40? Because I may not put, I may not put lot of load. That's why I have taken 40. But ideal scaling should happen when the moment it reaches 75 or 80%, you should start scaling your things. You should not wait till it goes 90, 95 like that. So the moment it reaches 75 or 80, it should start scaling. So in real time, you can keep like this. But the concept is important. Is the values are always same? Is it like always 100 millicore, 60 millicore? Is it like always 40, like that, 80? No. Now, let me keep this 40. So these are metrics, threshold values. But this HPA is for which application? This HPA is going to target which application? Which deployment or which replica set or which stateful set, because I will have hundreds of deployments or tens of deployments. This HPA is for all the deployments, whatever I have deployed in my cluster? No. So this deployment is for which target, where we are linking that, where this is for which deployment or which replica set, where we are linking that. Do I have something called scale target reference here? So this HPA is for which deployment? Here we have given something like this: scale target reference, API version is app/v1, kind is deployment. This is my deployment name. So do I have my deployment already created with same name here? I already have one deployment created with this name, HPA deployment. I am using like this. Let's say I want to use this for different deployment. Can I do something like this? Java web app deployment, whatever you created, something like this. If you want to use this for Node.js application, for that Node.js also you have deployed as a deployment. Can I say something like this? But suppose I have created a replica set instead of deployment for this one. If I say deployment and this name, but this is not a deployment, let's say it's a replica set directly, again will it work? If it is a replica set, can I say something like this? Replica set, that replica set name, If it is a replication controller, do I need to say something like this? Replication controller, and that replication controller name here. But for replication controller, is this correct? No. It should be something like this. Is everyone clear how this horizontal pod autoscaler will be targeting which deployment, which replica set, or which replication controller? While creating a HPA, am I defining the scale target reference here? So that it is going to look after the deployment, it is going to look after the pods of the deployment. Whenever it goes beyond this threshold, is it going to start increasing and decreasing automatically? This HPA will internally execute this command. You are not manually executing. Is it going to internally execute this command like this? Scale deployment, this deployment name. It is internally going to do this deployment name hyphen replicas. Whenever there is a load, it will do 3, 4, 5. But will it go beyond 5 because of this min replica, max replicas? No. Whenever there is a no load, not only just increasing, whenever there is no load, again, will it start decreasing like this 3, 4, 2, but will it come down below 2? Will it scale down below 2? No. So within this minimum and maximum, does the scaling will be taken care by this HPA based on the observed metrics on that deployment pods containers? Yes. So let me deploy this. As of now, do I have a HPA, guys? As of now, do I have a HPA? No. Now let me deploy HPA. Let me create a HPA. But again, you are not using these things properly, it will not work. One more important, when I am using HPA, does this replica make any sense? Let's say I have given replicas as 3 in my deployment. Now I have given min replicas as 2. How it works? These type of questions also they will ask in the interview. Now I am deploying deployment as well as HPA together. Now what will happen? Here I am giving replicas as 3, but here I am giving minimum replicas as 2. How it works? What happens? How many replicas will be created when you are deploying these two together? You are deploying the deployment and also HPA, how many it will create? Basically, what happens? Deployment will create 3 replicas only, but it will create 3 pods. But if there is no load, on those deployment pods, does this HPA will scale down to 2? It will create 3 replicas, but does the HPA will remove one additional pod? Does that HPA will remove additional pod if there is no load? There is no load. It will remove that additional pod. So it will create 3, but it will scale down 2 if there is no load. So if you are creating a deployment with HPA, even though you don't mention this one, now how many parts will be created? Suppose you are removing that replicas section, then how many it will create now? Based on your HPA, how many it will create now? Even though you don't mention 2. So while creating a deployments or replica sets with HPA, does defining a replicas makes any sense? No. Okay. Sometimes in the interview they are going to ask these type of questions also. Is everyone clear? What is what now? Now let me deploy. But even though I define, that doesn't matter. Now let me deploy. kubectl apply -f that HPA demo. Now do I have a one more Kubernetes resource HPA created? kubectl get all. Now do I have a HPA horizontal pod autoscaler? This is the name. This can be anything. This is targeted to which deployment? Is this HPA is targeting to this reference? I mean to say this deployment. This HPA is targeting to this reference, this deployment. Now it is still calculating. As of now, there are two things here. One is memory, another one is CPU. So as of now, how much CPU utilization average? It is going to calculate average of those two pods, average of the current replicas. Now if you see CPU, how much in each pod in the deployment, how much as of now? 1 millicore. So average of this one. So 1 plus 1, 1 plus 1, 2 millicore. And currently how many replicas are there? It is going to take average. Currently how many replicas are there? Current 2. So it is taking average of those two, like 1 plus 1 by 2, 1 plus 1 by 2, like 2 by 2. Does the average is coming 1 millicore? I mean to say 1% of CPU? Yes. When it comes to memory, is it taking average 9 with that percentage? 92 plus Out of 64 it is taking, it is coming to somewhere around 32% of that 64. Now, as of now, is this are under our threshold values? Is the memory utilization and CPU utilization, as of now, is it under our threshold values, target values? Yes. So there is no load. There is no load. So currently there are two replicas, minimum 2 pods, maximum 5 pods. Now, if I put the same thing again, if I increase the load, now since we have a HPA, is that the scaling will happen automatically? The number of pods will be increased automatically now. Let me open another tab also here. Let me open another tab also here. I will watch HPA. I will watch HPA. I will watch HPA here. I am connecting to same machine only. Same machine where I have a kubectl. Yes, don't consider all these things. This is nothing. I am just connecting to same machine to watch different resources. What is happening? It is nothing to do with your Kubernetes. This is SSH terminal opening in multiple places. Here I will watch kubectl get HPA. Kubectl, there is a typo. Now currently if you observe, this much memory utilization, this much CPU utilization, current replicas is how many? You can see min pods, max pods, and replicas 2. Now let me create the temporary pod. Let me create the temporary pod, that busybox temporary pod. Again, I am creating the temporary pod. Now let me put that load. Let me put that load again. Where is that command? This one, infinitely. Now let me put that load. Now you observe all the locations. Since I am increasing the load, a lot of people started accessing application. His CPU utilization is going high here. I am watching the pods here. CPU utilization is going high. Now, is it calculating now? Is it calculating? Now, if you see, it is already above the threshold. Now, current average is how much? 53. Now, if you see, is it created one pod now? Just 9 seconds ago, 11 seconds ago, is it created one pod? Now, do I have a total 3 pods for that? Do I have a total 3 pods for that? Now here also, can I see the current replicas HPA? Can I see the current replicas as 3 now? Now again, it is taking average. It is not like a single. It is taking average. Now is it taking average like 27 plus 32 plus 53 by 3 with that number of CPUs comparing? Now is it our control now? Is it under the threshold value? Even though it is 60, it is not going to take individually. It is not going to take individually. So it is going to take average. Now 60 plus 42 plus 27 by current replicas with that threshold. Now it is under control. Now am I going to get another pod? Because it is under control, am I going to get another pod? No. But if still lot of people access this application, if the load is getting increased and again if it is going above 40 again, am I going to get fourth pod automatically? If your application is memory centric, then if it is going beyond this 40% memory, does scaling will happen because I have both CPU and memory thresholds both? Yes. Now with this I am not able to put more than that much, so it is always under control. I may not get. Again, it is scaling your pods. But one more problem here. Let's say you don't have any nodes available with that whatever resources you are requesting for each pod. You are requesting this much CPU, this much memory for your pods, right? Let's say you have already lot of pods scheduled, lot of pods are running, then you don't have that much CPU and memory available. Even though you see number of replicas as 3, does that pod will be in a pending state if you don't have enough nodes, enough CPU and memory available? Yes. within the given servers, within the given cluster, will I able to scale up, scale down my parts automatically using this pod auto scaler, provided you have enough CPU, enough memory, enough nodes in the cluster? Yes. But does this Kubernetes will scale the nodes? Is it going to scale the nodes? Nodes in the sense servers? No. Pod autoscaler is different, node autoscaler is different. Pod autoscaler is different, node autoscaler is different. So the self-managed Kubernetes clusters might not support node autoscaler, but if I go for a managed Kubernetes clusters like EKS, AKS, GKS, or GKE, will I able to scale my nodes also? The way I am scaling the pods, does nodes also get scaled automatically? If your pods are in a pending state, does that cluster autoscaler will scale the node? Does again that pod get scheduled in that new node, whatever we got by the node autoscaler? Yes. That I will explain later. That I will explain later. Now, if I stop the load, if I come back, if there is no load, after some time, there will be some grace period, guys. It will not going to terminate immediately. Let's say after 5-10 minutes, if I come and watch here, after 5-10 minutes, if I come and watch here, do I really have a 3 pods for that deployment? No, only 2 if there is no load. Now, if you see there is a HPA, if required, can I describe HPA also and see what is happening? kubectl describe HPA. Now, when I am describing HPA, is it saying, is it saying 4 minutes ago new size is 3? What is the reason why the new size is 3? The reason is the CPU utilization is above that threshold? Because of that, is it increase that size to 3? Yes. Now, if you see, is it under control now? If you see, currently 1%, 1 millicore, 29% of memory, the current and the target. So you can see like this. Now, this is one application. If I want to do same thing for my application, like Java application, Python application, or your own application also, can I create a HPA? By defining resources, you need to define the resources. Otherwise, these resources, this application, let me take Maven web app. Maybe you can take deployment or whatever it is, or replica set also. Now, first thing, do I need to define that resources? Because this scaling happens based on the resource request. Do I need to define that resources here? Resources, requests, requests, CPU. Guys, if you allocate less CPU, do you think your containers will work? Let's say memory, I'm just assigning just 56 MI. Do you think I am minimum this much I am requesting? Let's say I am limiting this to just 128 or 100 MI. Do you think your Tomcat will start within this limit if you are requesting very less? Because Balaji sir has used this much, let me use in my application also. Do you think will it work? Something like this if you do. I am requesting this much, I am limiting also this much. Forget about HPA. Forget about HPA. I am not creating HPA. If I deploy this application, first let me delete whatever applications I have in that test namespace. I have deployed that application in the test namespace. Let me delete and show that. Let me delete this whatever I have deployed already. kubectl delete deployment. Existing, I am just removing. Now let me deploy with this much resources. I am using this much resources. I am requesting and limiting 56. Do you think Does the Tomcat and that application will be able to start within that 56 millicore, 56 MI? There is some issue. Revision history limit. There is issue some in that manifest. What is that issue? Revision. I'm creating a deployment only. Revision typo. There is a typo here. Revision history limit. Now, if you see, I created a deployment. I created a deployment. Now containers are running. Containers are running. Let's see with, do I see this OIM killed status as OIM killed? Again, it will try to start. Again, it will try to start. Again, will it be killed because within that 56 millicore, is it able to start? You can see number of restarts also. Number of restarts also it is showing one. Again, your Kubernetes is trying to start that container. Is that container will be again started within that limit? No. So kind of a loop, kind of a loop, kind of a loop. After some time, can I see crash loop backup? After some time, instead of OIM killed, after 3-4 times, if this happened, I can see some kind of a crash loop backup. Now, can I describe and see that pod? What is the reason? kubectl describe pod. I can describe this pod. And then you can see the status of that container also here. Exited. What is the reason? Exited. What is the reason? OIM killed. Now, is it like a crash loop backup? Crash loop backup will happen for lot of reasons, guys. This is not only one reason. This is one of the reasons. Suppose your application is failed to start because of some wrong configurations, you don't have dependent softwares or libraries in that container, you are trying to execute some command while starting the container, that is not coming up. Again, will I see this type of crash loop backup? Again, yes. This is one of the reason, not always same reason. Now, that is because I have given very less limits, very less resources. As I already told, is it based on your requirement? Now let's say I am giving something like this minimum. Minimum I am giving something like this. Maximum it can go. Maximum it can go 5, 12 or 1 GB. This one also I can say maybe 500 millicore or 500 millicore like this. Now this is just a normal deployment. Now for this deployment, can I create a HPA also? For this application, can I create a HPA also? Based on the load you want to increase and decrease. Something like this. Something like this. Whether it is only CPU, you can use CPU. Whether it's only memory, let's say I'm giving 80%. Let's say 80%, 80% or 85% like this. But here, do I need to give the correct deployment target? This is my deployment. So here, the scale target reference. Do I need to give like this? Some name, like Maven Web App HPA. Maven Web App HPA or autoscaler like this. And namespace also, guys. As of now, the deployment is in which namespace? The deployment is in which namespace? This one. This deployment is in which namespace? Test NS. So do I need to have HPA also created in the same namespace for that application? So this way, can I create a HPA for any application, guys? This way, can I create a HPA for any deployment, any replica set, any? think based on your requirement. Now, whenever there is a load on this application, if it is crossing this threshold, if it is crossing these thresholds against these requests, then does the scaling will happen automatically? Will it increase the decrease the parts of this one? Provided you have enough resources available in the cluster. Provided you have enough resources available in the cluster. Is everyone clear what is pod autoscaler with respect to pod autoscaler? What is HPA? How it works? Is everyone clear now? And what is resource request and what is resource limits also? Is everyone clear? Now, if you see, it is calculating CPU and memory. I have defined the threshold as 85% for memory, 80% for CPU. Now it is under control for that application. Control for that application. Am I going to get third pod, fourth pod now for this deployment? No. But whenever there is a lot of load, maybe internal applications are accessing that application, or requests are coming from outside, end users are accessing that application, or other microservice, other application which is running in the cluster is accessing that application. If there is a load, is it going to scale up, scale down the deployment pods automatically by this HPA? Yes. So that is all about HPA. Is everyone clear what is HPA, what is pod autoscaler? With the labs, with in detail what is happening in the background also going to happen. So for descaling, nowhere we will mention, guys. For descaling, nowhere it will mention. It will have some internal algorithms. So if it is again less than that kind of a 30%, 40%, now target I have mentioned 85 or 80. If it is comes beyond 50, 40%, then it will start scale down. Okay. So that is how it works. Thank you, guys. That's it for today for horizontal pod autoscaler. Are we going to use these things also along with your deployments, your services? Are we going to use this HPA also with for our applications in the actual Kubernetes clusters? Yes. So this is how it works. I'll continue tomorrow with a different topic. Try to practice whatever has been discussed today. Understand the concept and practice. I'll see you tomorrow. And one more thing, lot of people are still having problems to set up the Kubernetes cluster. One guy has posted today, he is not able to join the worker with the master. Is it clearly saying operation timed out on so and so IP, so and so port? I in the class also many times I have explained how to troubleshoot if there is a timeouts, all these things. Is it clearly showing that message? He just posted that screenshot. Is it clearly saying that message saying that operation timed out on so and so port, so and so IP? So do you need to double check whether there is a network connectivity from that server to that IP and port? Is their firewall is opened or not? All these things we have already discussed, guys. Without practice, without practicing, and without understanding, without attending all the concepts, you will have issues even though we discussed. Did I explain already the terror? What do you mean by network? What do you mean by firewall? So what is happening if there is no network, how it works? All these things are already discussed. Make sure you are attending all the classes. Till we have lot of classes, we are just going step by step. I may need another maybe till 13 to 15 classes is required to cover all the Kubernetes concepts. There are a lot of advanced things comes. Volumes, liveness probe, readiness probe, config maps, secrets, ingress, stateful sets. There are a lot of advanced concepts also comes. We are going to discuss next another 13 to 15 days is required. Thank you, guys. That's it for today. I'll continue tomorrow. Try to practice.